Hi guys, good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about another Azure product in the Tech Into, and we're going to be talking about how to run containers in Azure. Yes, we're going to be talking about Azure Container Instance, and my name is Nachipin. I'm going to be a host for this session, and we have with us Mohit, who would be walking us through Azure Container Instance and explaining its capabilities. Do you want to say something about Container Instance, Mohit?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So, myself Mohit, and I would be talking about ACI today. Let me put it this way. ACI is basically the simplest way to run a container in Azure without, worrying about the VM or any other high level, infrastructure or any other service. To put it in few words, it's basically a serverless container as a service, and it's as easy that you do not need to worry about launching a VM, deploying a container. You just need to take an ACI endpoint, consume it, and it's going to take care of everything. So you just deploy it there, and the ACI is going to take care of everything in the backend. So it's really lightweight, and it's the easiest way, as I mentioned, to deploy a container.
Okay, so what you're saying is it's not complicated. We don't need to have a VM. We don't need to install Docker in it. We don't need to pull the image, and we don't need to do all these things. You can just get the container running in Azure.
Exactly, Naji. That's true.
Okay, nice. Could you just show us how it works?
Sure, why not? I would just share my screen so that you
Sure.
can. I just let me know if it's visible.
Not yet.
Is
Yeah, I
it
can see a
visible?
screen now.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
great. What we are going to do is we are going to create a new resource. So in this case, it would be the container instance. So I can type ACI, and as you can see, we got something as container instance. So let's create one, since this is for today's demo. Okay, so here we need to create, we'll be creating a resource group. So in this case, I can mention this as ACI demo. And I have, Nachi, I've chosen one image, and this is something that I'm going to pull from Docker Hub. And it's basically a speed test image.
Okay, so nice. We can also see a demo of what your speed is.
Yeah. Okay. So, like as we can see, the source could be a quick image, which are, some default images which are present by Microsoft. So you can run a Hello World program, you can run Nginx, or you can run a Windows Server core. We can also, take images from the Azure Container Registry, which is, your private repository wherein you must be storing your images, or from Docker Hub. So in this case, since we are taking the image from Docker, we are going to provide the image name from Docker. And there are hints which are given, as you can see, that we need to provide a fully qualified name. So in this case, it's Linux server, the breastfeed.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can also change the size. The OS type in this case is basically Linux, since this is a Linux image. So I'm going to keep it as is. Size, that's the size, or the CPU and the memory that we are going to consume. So this is something that I would like to change. So by default, it's one CPU core. Let's make it 2, and I would change the memory as 4.
So
And
you're
as
going to be billed based on what you choose here. So if you
exactly,
choose a
Nachi,
higher thing, you're going to be billed more. Okay,
exactly,
got it.
exactly. So as you can see, the choices are, you can have core from, you can choose till 4 cores. And in terms of memory, you can have from 0.5 to 1 to 14. So in this case,
Okay.
I'm choosing 4. As you can see, this is selected. Then we can go to networking. You can specify the port. you can specify which kind of network you would like to choose. Since we are going to, you know, show this demo, that's why we would like to make this as private.
Public.
Sorry, public. For
Okay.
yeah, sorry, yeah, and for the private, we can choose any existing network, and if we are going to have none, then we can only interact using the command line. Okay.
Understood.
We can also create a fully, a DNS for this. And since the image that I am going to work with runs on port 80, so we'll keep this as default as port 80. But that depends upon the image. So if if your image
Okay.
talks, is opened up at the port is open at 5000, then you can specify 5000 there, and then yeah, once you can use that. There are some
So
restart.
shouldn't you be creating a fully qualified domain name to access it?
We can, but this time around, I'll just use the IP address.
Okay. So you
Yeah,
can, okay, you're accessing it by the IP. Understood.
exactly. So there are a couple of restart, policy which are mentioned here. One is, on failure, we restart the instance, or we always restart the instance whenever, there is some transaction being done, or we never restart. So
Okay.
a definition for this is basically defined here. You can mark, you have the capability to have the environment variable here. So you can specify key value pairs here. You can specify some tags, which would be useful when, like in case of billing, or, maybe in case of
For the normal
categorizing.
management purposes. Okay.
Exactly. So then we click on review and create. So here we can review what we have defined here. So we have chosen the resource group as ACI demo. Region is Germany, and container name that we have chosen is speed test. The image we have specified as Linux server, which is I'm pulling it from the Docker Hub. And as you can see, it has passed the validation, and we click on create, it will create the container
Okay.
instance
So
for us.
that's all you need to do for creating a container, a running instance of container. Just
Exactly.
specify the name from the Docker Hub, what you want to pull, and it automatically wires up everything behind the scenes, and you have a application running. So nothing else has to be provisioned.
Exactly, Nachi. So, it's just, a few clicks of the button, and if you have the image, it's just few button clicks away. So what
Okay,
we can
nice.
do is we can go to the resource group. Then, as you can see from the bell icon, it's saying that it's currently, the deployment is in
In
progress.
progress.
So if we refresh, we should be able to see something.
Okay, so we have the deployment succeeded already.
Exactly.
That's quite fast.
Yeah, that was quite fast. So as you can see, we have the instance, we have the public IP. So let's try to connect this. So as you
Okay,
can
you have a
see
speed
here,
test.
I have the speed test. If I click on, start, it will start the speed test, and you should be able to see my internet feed. And Nachi, as you can see, we were able to achieve this, within a fraction of seconds, or maybe, a minute or two. It was that fast.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, now that you have a server, I mean, a web application running from a Docker container, like, I mean, are the normal things possible? Like, can you monitor how much of load it's taking, and how much of CPU it's using, and what's the network and stuff like that? Or we wouldn't have those capabilities with Azure Container Instance?
Nachi, we do have those capabilities. What I'm going to do is I would like to increase some load. So I'm going to open some of the instance. Let's, open few of them so that we can see what all we can monitor, and we can see some graph, popping up. So just give me
Okay.
a moment. Let me run this couple of times so that we have some load already. And what we can do is we can go back to our container instance. Okay, there we are. So as you can see, Nachi, here we have the CPU, uh, the memory that we can monitor. We have the network bytes received and the networks byte transmitted. So as you can see, we have increased the load. We should be able to see some graph popping up pretty soon. And this is how we can have the statics there. So this will tell us the CPU utilization, the memory usage that this is giving us the average, and also the network bytes received and the network byte transmitted.
Okay. So this is going to take a bit of time so that the load, what's the load gets reflected here.
Yeah,
So that's the reason you're not seeing the graphs at this point.
exactly. So it will take
Okay.
a few moments, and then we should be able to see.
Okay. Okay. Looks like maybe it's taking a little longer to get the graphs reflected. Then, I mean, is there something else like to monitor? Like, for instance, can we see the logs?
Yeah, sure, Nachi. I think if we go to the property section, there you can see the properties. If you go to the containers, and if we go to the logs, then we should be able to see the containers. So the container that
Okay.
we have run, these are the container logs that are being, that's something that we can see.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's something also a bit interesting which we can see here, which is basically in the events. So as you can see, since I've given the image name, it first pulled. So it started pulling the image, then it has pulled the image,
Okay.
and then it started the image. So you can see how the ACI is basically treating the container. So it's pulling, pulled, and then it started.
Okay. So this is nice. So, which means if there is a restart for some reason, we also get to know that how many times it has been restarted and stuff like that.
Exactly, exactly. And the other thing, Nachi, that we can do is, so if somebody needs to connect to the container, what they can do is, there is already a utility which is, so as you can see in the connect, through bash, people can connect to the container and execute something on the container. Okay, I think the load is still not shown. Let's come back again. Okay. Nachi, is this something else that you would like to know about
Okay.
ACI?
Is there a way to like scale out the containers and stuff like that here?
Nachi, there is no way to scale out the container in ACI. The recommended way from Azure is, if you need some sophistication, wherein you need to outgrow, then, Azure recommends to use the K8, which is, the AKS, and there is already an integration with the virtual kubelet, wherein you can directly mm, like outgrow the ACI into AKS, which is Azure
Okay.
Kubernetes
Okay.
Services. Yeah.
Okay. And would it be possible to run multiple containers in one instance, or how does that?
It is possible. So there is something known as container group, wherein we can group together multiple containers and run it. But having said that, there is always a limitation. But yes, if there is simple application or something which requires two containers to run, that's possible.
Okay. Yes, Mohit. So this is pretty impressive. So we have been able to get a web server up and running without much of effort.
Mhm.
And what I also realized is we're not having any provisioning any VMs or any installation of any other software. So mostly it came out of the box. It's pretty much similar to an Azure function, right?
Mhm.
Where you just say what has to run, it runs.
Yeah.
So what would really be the difference between Azure functions and Azure Container Instance?
Okay, hey, that's a really good question, Nachi. The main difference for the Azure functions and the ACI is that generally the Azure functions or the serverless functions are used for short-lived event-driven based microservices. Something which pops in and pops out. But the ACI instance is something that can live as short-lived as well as something that can be long-running as well. So it's not something that has to be short-lived. And like I do get this question often, wherein people say that ACI is generally for testing or development purposes. Uh, the answer is yes and no. Yes, being this is simple enough. If you need to run a container, you can just start this within a fraction of minutes. But this can also be used for production grade application, wherein your application, when I say production grade application, something that you have a middle tier application, or a supporting web application. So you know these have capabilities to run in production as well.
Okay, nice.
Okay, Nachi, finally we were able to manage to get some statistics. So this is the CPU utilization, and as you can see, there is a memory utilization. The average is 51.61 millicores, and the memory usage is the maximum that it went was 600 MB. So yeah,
Okay,
yeah, and we can see the network traffic as well. So the bytes received and the byte transmitted.
okay.
Yeah. So
So
nice,
nice.
nice. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Mohit, for the demo. I hope this discussion was meaningful and useful for the viewers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
See you then. Bye bye.